World War I lasted from 1914 all the way to 1918 and claimed the lives of 20 million men. At the end of the war, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany had abdicated, causing the dissolution of his empire, and later the breakdown of the Austro-Hungarian Empire also occurred. Then, 21 years later, World War II occurred. But I have a question. How exactly would World War II have played out if the Central Powers still existed in their original prime? Well, today I tested just that. Today I reformed the Central Powers and attempted to conquer the entirety of Europe. Stick around to the end to see just how successful the Central Powers will be against the Allies in World War II. Now, I ain't going to bore you with the basics. I opposed the bad man, built up my industry and organised my army. Things that are done in almost every single save. Well, except for the opposed Moustache Man focus. That's only done in this save when you're trying to form the Central Powers. Oh yeah, I also did some research, but I'll let you guys guess what I researched because I think it's going to be pretty obvious. If you want, you can even try and take a wild guess in the comments. Bang, Civil War. And I actually have something to admit here. I've lost this Civil War at least 3 times in the past. And I know, I'm cheeks at this game, but it's true. And I feel like I just had to tell you guys that because this battle should not be something that you struggle with, and I've struggled with it quite a few times. But this time round, I've cooked up an insane strategy. So, all you have to do is cook up a bunch of cavalry once the war starts, use them to thicken out your southern line, and then for your northern line, put all your proper infantry division on the front line and just obliterate the Reich. Now you may get a few red bubbles in the south, but that's fine, you can ignore it, because once you encircle the northern troops, they will run out of divisions, their front line will thinnen, and you can get an easy victory from there. Just like that, as you can see, I have not only taken Berlin, but I'm also encircling troops near Rostock, and so at this point in the Civil War, I can already say that victory is mine, because they're going to run out of troops very, very soon. And just like that, in only a couple months, I have secured victory against my first opponent. The next order of business is to beg the Netherlands for the king back, because, well, we're not much of an empire without an emperor. And because the Dutch love me and trust me so much, they chose to give him back. I am pretty sure they are going to regret that decision. Now that I had formed the German Empire, the only 2 nations left to form was the Kingdom of Italy and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Both of these nations were actually really easy to form, as all I had to do was a focus tree. But I can hear you all thinking it, there is one nation I haven't mentioned yet, and that nation was quite a prominent member of the Central Powers back in its day. The nation you're all thinking of is the not-so-central Ottoman Empire. Now, while I would love to form them, I don't actually have any DRCs, so it's currently impossible for me to form them. I mean, I don't even know if it's possible to form them with DRCs, but I'm just saying, I don't have any DRCs, so even if there was a chance of forming them, I can't do it, unfortunately. And now there we are, the gang is back together, and we are ready to do World War I. At least that's what I wanted you to believe, because the Soviet Union didn't like Poland, and since I had done the focused Danzig for guarantees, I now didn't like the Soviets. So I had to do a massive detour from my original World War I plan to deal with the Soviets first. And it's safe to say that it actually went really well. I was genuinely really surprised by how well this went. And the reason this went really well was because of the big E, encirclements. Oh my god. Obviously I knew encirclements were good, but I didn't realise just how good they were against the Russians. Because as soon as this little pocket, well I say little, it was huge, but as soon as I closed this down, not only did they lose all those divisions, but they lost all of that equipment. And because Poland was actually insane in this save file, the Russians lost their industry really, really quickly. So they couldn't produce enough units of equipment to fill all their divisions up. So what this actually led to was not only this encirclement getting shut down, but because the Soviets lost all of their industry, pretty much all of their divisions were at 50% strength for the longest time, so I could just do massive battle plans and I would be losing very little men at the end of them. In fact, this battle plan that I'm currently showing you was possible only after doing 6 medium-sized encirclements, and I know that may sound like a lot, but for some reason, down in the Baltic states, well, up in the Baltic states, the Russians and the Soviets just lost all sense of logic. They just let me encircle them really, really easily. And for anyone who's curious, in the peace deal, I just puppeted the entirety of the Soviet Union. Well, I tried to puppet the entirety of the Soviet Union. Italy took Stalingrad and the neighbouring provinces down there, but on the whole, I took pretty much the entirety of the Soviet Union. The Austro-Hungarians took Romania, and Poland, the original victim, got absolutely nothing, as usual. Before getting on to the main point of this video, which is fighting the Allies, I first declared on Spain, and I had one very good reason for this. 2 front lines are better than 1. So the plan was, I was going to take out Spain, turn them into a vassal, and then I was going to beat up France from both sides, because I would rather have the French split across 2 front lines than all dogpiled onto one, because it would be easier to pierce 2 thin front lines than 1 thick front line. As to the German-Spanish War itself, we don't talk about our first 3 naval invasions, because it cost me 500,000 men and a very bruised ego. But as soon as I managed to get a successful landing, the Spanish didn't last very long, because they were still dealing with the negatives that are caused from their civil war. They hadn't caught all of their land, they still had that massive negative multiplier, and so their troops were not good in the slightest. An extra bonus of this campaign was also the fact that I was the only one who really did anything, so I was able to get the entirety of the mainland capitulated and puppeted, so I had the perfect staging ground to start a war with France now. And starting a war with France is exactly what I did. But to be honest, because this France had been given so much time to prepare for the war, the first couple years of this campaign had very little progress made in them. So all I could do at the moment was gradually whittle down their divisions, weakening them until I could eventually pierce their front line. If you're actually curious as to how I whittled them down over time, all I did was I let them naval invade me. I then used my tanks to completely obliterate the naval invasion. Essentially that would lead to the destruction of tons of their divisions and the loss of tons of equipment and manpower. So that would eventually over time weaken their front line, because they had to be getting the divisions from somewhere, and more often than not it was from the front line. So over time this weakened the front line until I could eventually pierce it. The Allies also tried to get Portugal to beat me up, but I just did the same strategy as I'd been doing with the naval invasions. I just put my tanks on their border, pressed the battle plan button, and I just capitulated them instantly. Italy was, however, in a bit of a rough spot, but I'm going to be honest with you all, they're fine. I'm sure they'll live. Italy was most certainly not fine. They did not live. They capitulated. Regno del Sud definitely reared its ugly head. So it was up to me to save Italy like usual. And I actually do. But I won't do it for at least another 30 seconds for you guys minimum, because I'm still trying to pierce the French front lines at the moment, and I'll be honest, as long as I hold the river by Milan, I'm fine with Italy not existing. I did not plan for this to happen. Out of all the things in this conquest, I'd actually planned for a lot of them and thought, okay, this could happen. This was one of the things that I didn't think could happen. You see, I had put my entire navy into that one sea to protect my front line, or to protect my coastline even. And by the looks of it, and this is a well-educated guess now, the Allies have such a humongous navy that mine got destroyed. Hence the naval invasion. How was I going to fix this issue? I wasn't. I'm just going to put some rubbish infantry on the front line. I'll hold them there until, the end of time if needs be, because the amount of land they've actually taken isn't significant. I have now finally pierced the French border. I've pushed up to Bordeaux, and I'm pushing far deeper into their territory. This took quite a long time. However, it was spelling the certain doom of the French now, because since I've now got past their main front line, and since I've already destroyed so many of their divisions, they actually really struggled to stop my advances now. So I could really rapidly take victory points from them, and also a large portion of their industry. And also, once I capitulate the French, so many front lines that are, say, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Italy, they will all become far weaker because a lot of them were manned by French troops. I don't know if this is a hot take or something like that, but as soon as I had destroyed so many divisions, and as soon as I had pierced their lines, this version of France was easier than the historical 1939 version of France, which has the disjointed government. Okay, that's enough bragging. Now it's time to deal with the Belgians and the Dutch. Actually, before we deal with those guys, I need to tell you how we're taking Italy back from the English. Whoop-de-doo. I know we're going to lose it again because the Italians are pretty rubbish at this game. Okay, I think the Belgians are even worse than the Italians because that was really easy to pierce their front lines. And I know I haven't shown you me piercing them, but even though they had tons of divisions on the front line, they just died. The Dutch, however, did not have the same story. They were very, very, very persistent. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. They have loads of rivers and loads of divisions. Because even though the Belgians had loads of divisions, they didn't have a lot of rivers. They were mostly plains, so I was able to take them out really easily. But because the Dutch have so many rivers, my attack and my breakthrough is like cut in half every single time I try to attack them. I did manage to get 2 decent naval invasions off, which stole the entirety of the north of the Netherlands, which was really helpful. But outside of that, it's been really slow work against the Netherlands. In fact, it was such slow work that I chose to take the Danes out instead. They really didn't put up much of a fight, if I'm being honest with you. The Danes were now beaten past their straits, so it was time for the Dutch to be beaten up again. And this time round, I had the genius strategy of using close air support. And I will be honest with you, I was incredibly impressed with how much easier it made the battles. I don't know why I didn't think of using them before, but at the very least I was now aware of their power, so I can use it in future battles and future YouTube videos to make my life a hell of a lot easier. Now that both the French, the Belgians and the Dutch were defeated, it was time to clean up in Italy, because there had been a great many naval invasions and a very little amount of resistance from the Italians. So I started off with cleaning up Marseille, Genoa, the entire west coast of Italy, and I even tried to clean up the Balkans a bit. I tried, I succeeded, and the job got done. However, this is not a victorious story. Like usual, things went into a complete gridlock. We started getting pushed back in Turkey, we started getting pushed back in the Balkans, and we started getting pushed back in Italy. This was not down to my incompetence, I don't think. Partly it is, a very small amount maybe, but the issue came with I had run out of manpower and I didn't have the war support to go up to the higher conscription levels. Not only that, but the Allied troops somehow kept getting stronger and stronger. It became an immovable wall, the Allied front line did. I just could not move it no matter how many men I threw at it and no matter what casts I could use. I mean, I couldn't even use my close air support for very long because they destroyed all of them. I even tried to use modern tanks as an extra specialised shock unit, but it still wasn't enough. The enemy nations simply had too large of a combined industry and too large of a combined manpower pool. Yes, if I had spent another 5 or 10 hours on this game, I could have whittled them down enough and won. But I don't have the time for that, I'm going to be honest with you, and I want to produce this video some point this century. So I'm going to have to pause the campaign there. In the end, we capitulated France, we capitulated Spain, we capitulated Russia, Turkey, loads of other nations, and we damaged the Allies beyond repair. They had something like 35 million casualties, we had something like 27 million casualties. So if we brought the Central Powers back into World War II, would they succeed? I think they would, because with that KDR ratio, it was bound to be our victory if it was a war of attrition. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to catch you all in the next one. I'm not sure what the next one's going to be yet, but it's going to be something to do with Hearts of Iron, I'm sure.